that I would feel it didn't get to me. Now I'm begging public masses.
If you're interested in making either 3D animations, visual effects, video games, VR, or 3D printing, then this is the video for you. This video will give you an introduction to 3D from a complete beginner's perspective by answering these two important questions. Where should I start, and what software should I be using? So let's start with this first one. There's a lot of buzzwords related to 3D. You got 3D gaming, 3D printing, animation, VR, ArchiViz, visual effects, and many more. So if you're confused, I don't blame you. Well, regardless of what field you want to specialize in, a basic understanding of 3D is necessary for all of these. And what you learn in one field can often be transferred to another. Like, let's say you made this one character. Well, that character could be rigged and animated to create an animated short, or it could be exported to a game engine and used as a playable character. It could be 3D printed to make a little chess piece. It could be injected into a VR world, or it could simply be rendered as a still image. So getting started in any of these areas requires this basic understanding of 3D. What are the basics? Well, they could be summed up as follows. Modeling an object by creating a cage and moving it about till it forms the shape of your object. Textures or materials to make the surface look real when it's rendered. And lighting to create a pleasing final image when it's rendered. These are what you could call the 3 building blocks of 3D. Now when you get more advanced, you'll learn about other stuff like animation or compositing, but 95% of what you want to make in 3D will use these fundamentals. And by the way, if you're interested in learning any of this stuff, stay to the end of the video and I'll suggest a video series for you to start on. So that's where to start, learning the fundamentals. Now the next question that follows this is a big one. What software should I be using? And this is made all the more daunting by the number of software choices. Now, some people will say that you should be using whatever the large studios are using, but there's not really an industry standard. Studios today typically use a range of different softwares for different things. And some studios like Pixar use their own in-house software that isn't even available to the public. But the good news is that if a studio likes your work, it doesn't matter what software you use. Art is their #1 priority. If you've got a great portfolio, you're already in. Provided they're not on a tight deadline, most studios will train you if you don't already use the software that they do. Case in point, Bjorn Leonard, who uses Blender. When he got a job at Animal Logic on the Lego Movie, they used XSI. So his first 2 weeks on the job was to learn it. And since he already knew the fundamentals of animation and theory in Blender, that was easily transferred to XSI. And once he learned it, he was quickly up to speed with the rest of the studio. So trust me, a lot of beginners get hung up on using what the studios use, but it's really not that important. In my opinion, your priorities for choosing a software should be 1. It's inexpensive, especially while learning. 2. It's functional to what you actually want it to do. And 3. It's easy to learn. So it's for these reasons that I recommend that everyone start with Blender. And I don't just say this because I happen to have a channel called Blender Guru. I say it for several reasons. The first reason is that of all the choices, Blender is the only one which is 100% free. You don't have to buy expensive software licenses or apply for limited student discounts. It's free and it always will be. Now, when you're just starting out, this is really important because you don't yet know if you'll even like 3D yet. Now, I'm just being realistic here, because I know people that assumed that the only way to learn 3D was to enroll at a college, spend upwards of $100,000 in student loans, pay for expensive software licenses, and then after 2 years have the sudden realization that 3D wasn't what they expected. Now, if they had started learning Blender at home, followed some free YouTube tutorials, they would have spent $0. And honestly, they probably would have enjoyed it more. So, Blender's free. But the next natural thought then is Blender as good as the expensive alternatives? After all, what's all that money go to if it's not to make them better? Well, just like how Wikipedia crushed Encarta, money doesn't always equal better. Blender is developed by volunteers around the world, which has its pros and cons, but one of the advantages is that you often get features that users truly want, whereas a public company often need to do a cost-benefit analysis to justify development time to their shareholders. But the real secret sauce of Blender, and this is the thing that really separates it from other open source softwares, is the open movies. Ton Roosendahl, who is the creator and founder of Blender, realized that without a real project to test Blender on, that they'd never know what features were necessary to make Blender production ready. So in 2005, he came up with the idea of open movies, short films that were made with Blender so they could learn the crucial features that artists need. They started with Elephant's Dream in 2005, which led them to develop the Compositor. Then Big Buck Bunny, which helped them to develop fur rendering. Sintel helped them develop smoke simulation, Tears of Steel for camera tracking and visual effects, and Cosmos Laundromat for improved painting and performance, among other things. There's even more open movies I haven't mentioned yet, but if you want to binge watch some great short films while also seeing what Blender can do, I recommend watching Sintel, Cosmos Laundromat, and Carmenandes 2. You can click the buttons here to watch them directly. These open movies have helped Blender go from being a low-key hobbyist tool to something that's truly production ready. With Blender, you can render photorealistic images, model and sculpt characters, create realistic environments, architecture, fire, smoke, fluid, object simulations, camera tracking, compositing, and much, much more. Tony DeRose from Pixar said that Blender can do almost everything that Pixar's in-house software can do, and that a bunch of guys who use Blender in their garage will be the next Pixar. So, that's what Blender can do. Before I close, I'll mention the final reason that I think beginners should start with Blender, and that's the community. In terms of search volume, Blender dominates YouTube, with several YouTubers like myself regularly making free tutorials on characters, environments, cars, or virtually anything you want to make. I've heard from users of other packages that this is one of Blender's very strong points. The community seems to want to give back, and as a result, you'll find people online that are constantly going out of their way to offer help. There's an active Blender subreddit, a dedicated Blender Stack Exchange, a Blender news site, and a Blender art forum. So if you're looking to get started in 3D, Blender is a very solid choice. Now I personally have been using Blender for 12 years, but I started in the exact same position that you're in right now. I taught myself how to use Blender by following some free tutorials that I found online, but today I teach others to do the same. So through this YouTube channel, Blender Guru, I make Blender tutorials and I show people how to use Blender.
Put me on a level, fuck Illuminati, that's word to the devil. Cause I am not about that, I just wanna love, I just wanna grow, I just wanna learn the passion it burns to write this music. I'm so late that I just might lose it, but don't ever confuse it, it's also worth it. I just wanna help hip hop, not hurt it. And as for my style, I don't know how to word it. Please, I'm way too proud to get down on my knees, but I'm begging, let me on a level. Fuck Illuminati, that's word to the devil. Cause I am not about that, I just wanna love, I just wanna grow, I just wanna learn the passion it burns to write this music. I'm so late that I just might lose it, but don't ever confuse it, it's also worth it. I just wanna help hip hop, not hurt it. And as for my style, I don't know how to word it. Why do you even have to categorize me? Fuck it, let them hate, let them all despise me. Cause I'm gonna take this, flip it up and make